So I started putting together a PowerPoint presentation, and before I knew it, it was like 80 slides long. It was enormous. And I showed it to a friend of mine, and he just laughed at me. He said, dude, like, you can't actually present this to anyone. It's going to take you 5 hours, but you have a great framework for a book. I never thought I would be an author when I ended up writing it. It was like an amazing journey of, discovering sort of what I was capable of. And I just wanted to translate Bitcoin into as relatable, digestible, easy to understand terms as possible. And I wanted to connect a bunch of dots because Bitcoin draws from, a myriad of disciplines. To put your work, your energy, your time, your skill into creating something of your own and putting your fingerprint on it and saying, like, I did this. There's a lot of personal satisfaction that comes from that. I had put content out there and it's still earning for me, little by little. It's nothing too exciting, but little by little, just sats are trickling in. I'm stacking sats. It's a cool feeling.
Welcome to another episode of Stacking Sats, my latest series devoted to sharing the stories of real people using Bitcoin products and services to stack sats. Today's episode features Jesse Berger, the author of Magic Internet Money, a book about Bitcoin. In addition to selling this book on Amazon, Jesse has stacked over 100,000 sats from pay-per-page and value-for-value based Lightning payments using Mash. We'll get into all of how that works in just a moment, but first, a quick message from our sponsors. Today's show is sponsored by Voltage. Voltage is the premier provider of Bitcoin and Lightning node infrastructure. Today's show is also sponsored by Stackwork. And Stackwork is a Lightning-powered transcription tool that takes the best of AIs and humans to create better, faster, less expensive transcripts. You can learn more about Voltage and Stackwork at the links in the description. Welcome to the show, Jesse. Thank you for joining me. And I am so excited to talk about your Magic Bitcoin book, talk about how you're stacking sats. But first, why don't we give listeners a background of your life prior to Bitcoin?
Yeah, sure thing. So before I got into Bitcoin, I was a sort of bottom of the corporate ladder banker. Subsequently, I took one step up the very long rung ladder and became a wealth manager. I worked with a portfolio manager to invest for high net worth families and companies, stock portfolios, bond portfolios, that kind of stuff, RSP, like savings accounts, all that sort of bread and butter investing. But basically, while I was there, I was there for 3 years. I had one good year followed by sort of 2 bad years. And I learned that, as much as clients love you when you make the money, they will hate you more than they ever love you when you lose money. And I did not, want to bear that burden for the rest of my life. So I decided, okay, I need to change industries. I went back to school, did my MBA, got into management consulting, did that for a couple of years. I managed the customer experience market research program for one of Canada's biggest insurance companies for 2 years. So like when you send out surveys to say, rank our service on a scale of 1 to 10, or how much do you like us? What do you think of this product, that product? So I ran all that, doing the reports and analysis on that for a couple of years for a big Canadian insurance company. And while I was there, in 2017, there was the whole boom in Bitcoin and the wider world of crypto. I got sucked into that. But by 2018, I basically realized that Bitcoin was the, big innovation. It was the thing that mattered in that whole space. And I just wanted to focus all my energy on it. And I ended up leaving, not initially setting out to write a book, but, to make a long story short, it just sort of happened. So here I am now.
What compelled you to write a book about Bitcoin?
Well, my background in banking and wealth management, I had been, if you want to call it, red pilled on Austrian economics and sound money. And so I was basically putting the pieces together of what Bitcoin is with that, philosophy and that perspective, that understanding of economics and sound money, and realizing that okay, Bitcoin is a really important innovation for our world. And I wanted to explain it to people. I wanted to get the word out, but I wanted to put together something that my mother could read and go, oh, okay, this is interesting. I can understand some aspects of it. I just wanted to translate Bitcoin into as relatable, digestible, easy to understand terms as possible. And I wanted to connect a bunch of dots because Bitcoin draws from a myriad of disciplines. You have a little bit of understanding of economics, of game theory, of technology, of engineering. You got to put all these pieces together, and it's difficult for most people. So I just wanted to give people a good introduction to a bunch of these topics and try to get people to understand how they all work together, and and work together seamlessly for Bitcoin, which is a miracle that it all actually works. So just trying to really paint that bigger picture of, hey, we have this thing, it accomplishes something quite remarkable, and it's actually working. So yeah, I just wanted to how did I get that message across in as simple terms as possible. So that was the mission.
Now, walk me through the timeline here. When did you start this project, and what were those steps along the way? Like, if you can kind of, uh, you know, give us a behind the scenes look at what it's like to be an author. I think that's very informative for folks listening. What are the steps involved in writing a book, and how long has this timeline been?
Yeah, so once I decided, well, I'll give you a very quick backtrack first. Basically, I spent a month um, putting together, we can call it a pitch deck, where I thought, okay, I left my corporate job. I had this background in wealth management. I, speak the language of money, so to speak. Maybe I will try to pitch investors on, hey, you should have some Bitcoin. This is a good idea. Here's why. So I started putting together a PowerPoint presentation, and before I knew it, it was like 80 slides long. It was enormous. Um, and I showed it to a friend of mine, and he just laughed at me. He said, "Dude, like, you can't actually present this to anyone. It's going to take you 5 hours, but you have a great framework for a book." And so basically, I slept on it, woke up the next day, and I was like, "Yeah, of course, that makes so much sense. I'll turn this into a book." So from the moment I decided to turn it into a book, it was about a year before I actually sort of hit publish on Amazon. And the process, count that first month of, okay, I created this framework for the chapters basically, and some of the core arguments, but it was all bones, and it was missing that meatiness, right? So I spent um, basically 8 months really crafting and refining uh, basically like 100 mini essays. Like if each slide, it was 80 slides at a time. It grew a little bit as I turned it into a book. But if each slide, like I moved each slide over into book format and made each slide a page of the book. So I was trying to convey one idea or one argument with every page, or every slide at the time, but that became every page. And then build up one page at a time, like you're building one block at a time, so that people can just, hone in on one idea, one concept, make sure they understand it, and just, build up their knowledge little by little with this. And then also, again, drawing in from all the other angles. But that took me 8 months or so because, to craft these tiny little stories and really pack a lot of punch in terms of getting a lot of signal in there and reducing the noise and using very friendly and relatable language. Like, that was not easy. I was racking my brain every day. And then once I submitted it, I worked with a professional editor. So she said, "Oh, I don't know anything about Bitcoin. I don't know if I can edit this." And I said, "No, that's perfect. I don't want you to know anything about Bitcoin. I need you to read this and make sure my arguments make sense, and you can understand them." So a few months back and forth, a few times with my editor, and then who I hired basically on my own. And then I ended up also hiring someone to format my book. So you can use. So I published on Amazon as Kindle Direct Publishing, which is the self publishing venue for Amazon, and I can talk afterwards if you want about the pros and cons of traditional publishing versus self-publishing. Um, but basically, Amazon has templates, so anyone can publish a book on Amazon. It's relatively easy. But spent a lot of I put a lot of work into really making the book a cohesive whole, having not just this unified message and binding the messages throughout, but binding the art and imagery, because I have a lot of literal full page graphics I put into the book. And so I hired basically I'm trying to say I hired someone to help me format it because I wanted to get that just right as well, so that when you see the book you're not just reading text. It's a bit of a work of art in my mind. That's how I treated it. Yeah, so I after that, after I had all these people, do their part, I put the whole thing together and published it on Amazon. I self-published it. Yeah.
And then so now this book, if I go to magicbitcoinbook.com, I see there is a Mash integration, I believe. And this is I can read the book online as well. Talk to me about how you went from first publishing on Amazon to then putting this book on a kind of lightning native website where folks can pay for it.
Yeah. It was a very, I would say, fortunate series of events that led to that. So Mash, for those that don't know, is a company that is trying to basically integrate Lightning into the web so that content creators can earn from their content that they have online. If that, I'm sure there's more to it, but that's the very simple pitch of what they're up to. And it just so happens that their CEO and I went to high school together. He was a year behind me. We had known each other, and me being having published the book, I put my name out there. Him with his company, I actually saw him on stage at Bitcoin Miami in 2020. I forget if it was 2020 in 2022, I guess, or pardon me, 2021. And so we touched base after that, um, and we kept in touch. And basically, he approached me a little later and said, "Hey, man, like we think there's an opportunity to sort of showcase your book and showcase what Mash can do in terms of getting paid value for content that you create. Would you be interested in integrating Mash into your website and sort of showcasing your book online and all the pages of the book online, and you would be able to receive sats for your work?" And so, naturally as a Bitcoiner, I'm like, yes, I want to receive sats for my work. That is literally exactly what I want as a Bitcoiner. Um, and so I think we launched what is considered the first ever book on Powered by Lightning. And now, because of the format of my book, and I spoke about this just a few minutes ago, that every page is sort of its own individual idea or argument or concept that I'm trying to impart to people. The format happens to work very well, where you can pay me 10 cents for one page and then turn the page, and you're paying 10 cents for the next. You can read the book start to finish, or if you want, you can just say, "Oh, Jesse has a chapter on scarcity. I'm just going to read those pages on scarcity and pay per page that I read there." So it gives a lot of optionality and flexibility to the reader. It makes my content a little bit more available to, maybe someone is very familiar with the concepts of money or economic growth, so they don't want to read about that, but they do want to read about scarcity or competition or resilience or or freedom or governance or some of the other chapters I have in there. Um, so yeah, so it was a really nice match for both of us.
Do you think that this formatting of, paying per page in a book, do you think that is going to become more common for all kinds of authors, or is it particularly useful for you just because, there's a nice tie with Bitcoin, your book's about Bitcoin, or do you see this like really expanding to every author?
Yeah, in terms of um, paying per page, the whole how the value for value model ends up playing out, or what is the quote best model, is far from determined. We pick this price per page as a starting point. I don't know that this is actually the best model. Should I be charging more for my page? Should I be charging less? um, I don't know. I know Gigi, who a lot of us here are familiar with, is a big proponent of information is meant to be free, and as generally I would agree with that. Like I wouldn't even be opposed. Like anyone can download the ebook, my ebook, totally for free, pirated. It's I know Safety's a big fan of pirate marketing. I get the appeal. I've sort of hopped on board. So I mean, technically, my book should be free in a certain light, and I'm open to doing that and I'm open to doing it because I think in line with what Gigi has been saying, and his value for value article is fantastic for anyone that hasn't read it. I recommend it. People appreciate it. It's like the busker on the street. If I'm out there playing music, I'm not charging anyone to play music, but people appreciate the work, will pay you for it because they appreciate. So I mean, there's donations available currently with Mash, right? You pay 10 cents per page, but if you really like the content I have out there, you can tip me $1, or tip me $2, or $5, or whatever you want. Um, so I don't know what the best model will ultimately be. Um, but this is, we're at the point in history with Bitcoin basically where we can experiment and try to figure out, what's working, what doesn't. It's a very interesting time.
Yeah, that is interesting. And when you're thinking about this pricing, so I believe you said it's 10 cents per page. How do you come up with that? Like what is your thinking about, are you saying like how many pages do I have in the book? Multiply that by 10 cents, see how much, does that relate to your Amazon price? What's your pricing strategy like?
Yeah, it can be a little bit arbitrary. So the physical book, I charge in, we'll use US dollars for simplicity. I think it's $19 for the book. So that would be roughly, what is it, about 50 cents per page. But the ebook is half that price, or it's like $9. So that takes us down to call it 25 cents per page. Because this venture with Mash, it's a bit experimental for both of us. I wanted to, I think we both want to lower the bar just a little and make it so that anyone could go in. It's a very cheap, just, hey, let's try this out and see how it works. I'm not trying to make a living per se on selling individual pages of my book. I'm going to have to sell a lot of pages for that to, really be something. Um, so yeah, right now we set the bar or set the price on the low side, um, just to see the kind of traction it gets and the volume it gets. But I mean, it's again because there is no precedent, there is no model for charging for direct consumer to creator for my content. We're figuring it out as we go.
Yeah, that's very cool. So are there any other tools you're using, or is it entirely Mash? Mash is the only tool right now on your site, I believe.
Yeah, right now I'm just using Mash on my website. It's just to keep it simple. I mean, it uses Lightning, right? I could post an on-chain address or something, but I don't think it's necessary for me right now. Maybe that'll change in the future. But I'm just using Mash at the moment.
Right. Makes sense. Um, what comes next for you? Like, is this going to be are you going to be an author that, releases a number of books over time? Or are you going to kind of dive deeper down the, lightning powered book rabbit hole? I'd love to hear about what you have planned next.
Yeah, totally. So I am working on something else on another, what I think is ultimately going to be another book. It's a big written piece basically, and whether or not I actually turn it into the book, thanks to this experiment with Mash, it's irrelevant because I could still actually post it on my website and sell it for Sats in a similar fashion if I want to. But yeah, currently I would say, and to be clear, it's actually not a Bitcoin related piece. When I wrote this book, Magic Internet Money, um, I had sort of set it up so that this was like I can't replicate this book. There's no sequel to this book. It very much is meant to stand just on its own merit and to stand the test of time. I was very conscious of making sure that the arguments and ideas that I put into this book would stand up over time. Um, so yeah, so no more. I mean, maybe I'll write articles here and there about Bitcoin, but I don't think another book is in the cards. So yeah, but I am working on another big written piece that, and I would say I'm finding my voice as an author. The Bitcoin book, I never thought I would be an author when I ended up writing it. It was like an amazing journey of discovering sort of what I was capable of, and now I'm taking those lessons and those tools and finding that, oh, I can apply those to other lines of thinking or areas of interest, and so I'm exploring that right now, and yeah, I'll be dropping a big written piece in the not too distant future, which may ultimately be incorporated into a book as well.
Cool. And so do you view this now as like a part-time thing for you? Do you want it to become a full-time thing? What's your like time commitment here?
Yeah, I would say right now writing is more of a part-time thing. I do a few other odds and ends, and I've consulted with people on Bitcoin, whether it's investors who are trying to understand it, or whether it's people who are wanting to buy it, and people just wanting to help set up a wallet. It's nothing too intense. Just being a resource for novices and interested no coiners. Um, but yeah, I could see whether it's doing speaking engagements on these topics. I mean, that ultimately could be in the future. COVID obviously put a hamper on just everyone getting around and doing stuff and changed that industry a little bit. So obviously things are coming around and getting getting back on track. So maybe exploring that. But yeah, I'm trying not to pigeonhole myself into anything right now. I want to see, I want to work on what I'm passionate about. The current project I'm working on, I'm like very passionate about, and we'll see where it leads.
Nice. Now, in writing this first book, did anything surprise you about either the process or the feedback or the sales? Anything across the board that stuck out?
Um, that stuck out. You know what? I think I was actually very lucky that I had a game plan. And well, two things, I guess. Number one, I actually started writing this book, and shortly after I started writing it, I found out a friend of mine was also writing a book on accounting, like on a completely different topic. But he was basically a few months ahead of me in his journey, so I kept getting the benefit of like the lessons he was learning as he was slogging through, as he was the first one through the door, sort of taking slings and arrows, and then he'd yell back to me, "Hey, look out for this, that, and the other." Um, so I had a relatively smooth journey. It was, I was my biggest obstacle and critic, because I was trying to really hone my message and be, as perfect as I could be with my writing, which is a pro and a con, right? Because I could keep editing and editing and editing it forever. It's hard to let go of something you work so hard on. Um, so I had that, and then in terms of like my marketing plan, um, I released the book, and I had sort of told myself, um, Bitcoiners, are some of the sharpest people out there. They're some of the most critical people out there. My book has to gain enough traction with them to for me to consider it a success. They have to read it and think, you know what? Yeah, there's no perfect book, but this is damn good. It imparts a bunch of good lessons. It's a great resource. If I can win them over, and they can, think, hey, like someone might read this, and like for every personality, there's a different book, right? So hey, this book is gonna, be attractive to a certain subset of people. um, if they think that, they'll take it, they'll help me run with it, they'll help me promote it as I'm trying to get on podcasts and whatnot to when I first launched it, right? To get the word out about it. So they did, by all accounts, the feedback has been great, people really like it. I'm very proud of it. So yeah, I'm very lucky that I had a relatively smooth publishing journey. I'm sure that's not the case for everyone. um, and self-publishing it is its own sort of unique challenge, because like I own every inch of that book, and I don't mean own as in the property rights, although I do, but I mean, um, like I own the design decisions, I own the sizing and the font and the positioning, like all the decisions came to me. So there was a certain responsibility that came with that, which if you outsource to a traditional publisher, they might have their own route that they're going to take, and they're going to have their own input on it. So yeah, it was. I'm lucky it went relatively smooth. I had a very clear vision for the book. The more I wrote it, the more it was just like crystal clear in my head what this had to be, and I think it turned out basically exactly as I wanted it.
Nice. Now let's chat numbers. Can you give people a sense for roughly how many sats you've stacked on Mash using this like lightning powered page by page system?
Yeah, so the book has been live, powered by Mash or powered by Lightning using Mash on my website for call it 9 months or so now, just to give you a bit of a time frame. Um, and it has earned me, we'll say, north of 100,000 sats and south of 1 million sats. Um, and it's very cool to just every week or whatever I might wake up and go check my Mash wallet and see, okay, oh wow, someone read a bunch of pages, or this person donated $1, after reading 5 pages, and they thought, oh, I'll tip them for this content. It's great. So yeah, that's sort of the amount and the time frame that has come in, and it's a cool feeling to just, hey, like, I had put content out there and it's still earning for me, little by little. It's nothing too exciting, but little by little, just sats are trickling in. I'm stacking sats. It's a cool feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a little Mash widget on my website, the stacksats.how website. And so it's just a donation widget. It's not like a pay per click or anything. But I also check every now and then, and I'm like, oh wow, 3 days ago someone sent some sats, and it's like I don't know who they were. I don't know why. There's a lot of things that I still, I hope to get more visibility into exactly what they were thinking and why they chose to tip sats then. But it's cool people are using it.
Yeah, and that like you said, it's I don't know who these people are. I don't actually know if it's the same reader that read the 5 pages in a row. I just, based on the timing, and can kind of figure out, okay, this was probably the same reader. But that's it. I don't have any information about their demographics. I don't know what country they're in. Um, I just know that someone's enjoying my content and paying me for it, which is yeah, it's very neat.
Right. Now, when thinking about one question I have on book sales is my impression from being on the outside of this industry and not having any visibility in is that the first kind of launch of a book is when most of the sales happen, and then it probably kind of like trickles off, and you get this like steady flow of sales that are like lower than that peak for a long time after that. Is that correct? And is there anything different about selling on Mash where you have this on a website and it's kind of living there all the time? It's not Amazon might be promoting a book in a certain time frame when it launches, then maybe not promoting it as a new book comes out. Is it different at all, the kind of like distribution over time of those sales?
Yeah, and I mean, you can, when things are promoted on Amazon, right? Like, people pay to promote on Amazon. I don't think they're highlighting too much on their own. Maybe they have a couple products or relationships with producers that they say, okay, we're going to produce for you. But for the most part, you're paying for any of the promotions or whatever you see on there. And yeah, you are correct. When I first launched in October 2020, for the first 3 or 4 months, like, sales were very high. Sales were fantastic. I was actually very pleasantly surprised with how things went those first few months. And then, of course, they sort of naturally tailed off, like you described. The book gets out there. The people that were like really interested at the outset found it. A few reviews start coming in. Um, and so then you get to a point where, or at least for me, yeah, like, I have enough reviews. I think I have 80 plus reviews online without paying. I haven't paid like anything for marketing. Just me spending my time going on podcasts and talking about Bitcoin and the book. Um, so sales have, at this point now, 2.5 years later, trickled off. I do still get sales. It's obviously much slower than it was at launch. Um, and in terms of, if you're trying to recreate or, generate more sales, obviously going on podcasts, speaking, putting yourself out there and making your content known, yeah, like that's going to draw attention. Someone who hadn't seen me or heard about my book is going to go, oh, that sounds really interesting. I'm going to pick that book up and give it a try. So that, you know, my sales at this point, any spikes or little boosts in sales are commensurate to, my marketing efforts. Um, but if I don't do anything, it's just, I'll get, um, we'll just call it a little bit of sales that just trickle in here and there because someone will go searching for something on Bitcoin or have stumbled across my tweets or an old podcast or whatever, and or word of mouth, just hey, oh yeah, you're new to Bitcoin, this book might be good for you based on what I know about you. So that happens. Same thing with Mash at the outset. Big boost. Now it's just still I still get pages basically almost every day. Um, so I get a couple hundred sats here and there that trickle in every day. Um, I'll give you one more thing that I've heard, and part of the reason that I'm actually very strongly considering turning this new piece I'm working on into a new book is that if you write a book or if you write multiple books and people like one of your books, they will naturally just want to go and find other books written by that same author. So sales from one feed sales of the other. And so the more books you have, and especially, in this case, I'm looking at a completely different topic. So you can sort of cross contaminate. Okay, hey, like if you write multiple books, right? It's more reasons for people to find your work, and it can kind of compound on each other.
That makes sense. So I want to finish this off with some advice. If there's other creators, aspiring authors, builders, anyone with an idea and they want to put it out into the world, what advice do you have for folks?
Creating something from scratch of my own creation that was completely unique and um, is a very real, tangible sort of piece of work that people recognize. Publishing a book, people recognize that as an accomplishment was very fulfilling. I really, really I didn't appreciate just how much people look at you a little different. You wrote a book, like whoa, that's a big deal. And I didn't appreciate that when I did it, but I obviously 2.5 years later, I get it. I see that now. So, and it doesn't have to be a book, right? That was just my example. But to put your work, your energy, your time, your skill into creating something of your own and putting your fingerprint on it and saying like I did this, there's a lot of personal satisfaction that comes from that. So I mean, I obviously encourage people to you know create things for themselves, whether they think other people will value it or just because they value it. um, Obviously a lot of time and energy went into it, but even if it wasn't necessarily financially the most rewarding, selling books is you have to write a lot of books and gain a lot of traction for books to be financially really rewarding. But just the personal satisfaction of it, I like it's been amazing. I'm very, very happy with it. So I'd encourage people to try to create something, any content of their own, and just something that they can be proud of, because you get to carry that with you everywhere always.
That's great advice. If you were to do anything different, if you know what you know now and you could rewind a few years, what would you be changing?
um, there's literally, if we talked about 100 little essays in the book, there's only one or two whose arguments I would say that, oh, I was slightly off on that, or just it didn't hold up. 98% of it absolutely holds up still, which I'm very happy with. But so like those are the only tiny things I would change, but I wouldn't really even change those because those were in the moment. I honestly, there's not a lot. I try not to regret too much, or look back and say, ah, I wish. Like you just have to do what you can, and be sure of yourself that you're making the right decision. So yeah, sorry, this is maybe a bad answer, but no, I don't have anything I look back on and really wish I did different when it comes to the book. Yeah, I'm very proud of it. I'm very, very proud of it.
That's good. That's good. where can people go to learn more about you and the book?
Yeah, for sure. So you can go to magicbitcoinbook.com. On there, you'll find links to buy the book on Amazon, to buy the audiobook, to buy the ebook, or of course, to stream me sats. And I'll show off. This is the book for those that are unfamiliar. So when I say my fingerprint is all over it, I mean, you know, this cover, I spent a lot of time to this cover tells a story in and of itself. The book, I'll just again show off right there's every page has its own unique title, a little quote to sort of pass on a message or some wisdom that that particular page is imparting. There's lots of just graphs and charts and things that I spent a lot of time designing, and of course here I'll get you the full page image example where I literally, you know, I'm telling a story within the story of Bitcoin or of the story of Bitcoin. It's like it almost can seem like a nonfiction or like a fiction, right? Bitcoin is like so surreal. It's almost like, well, in theory, it shouldn't even exist, but like, hey, it works in reality. So this is sort of like the same thing where I've created this book that has this ethereal kind of dreamy allure, I think, to it. Maybe I'm getting a little out there, but it has a certain quality to it. But it's very much based in the real world. And so yeah. You can find the book magicbitcoinbook.com or follow me on Twitter at Jayberjay, Jayberjay.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time today, and keep on stacking sats.
Thank you very much. I will.